folks. Welcome to the edition of the hybrid Boston Healthcare Cloud Community Meetup. And so a little bit about us. We meet twice a month. Actually, let me back up. I'll go in the same order as the slides. So I'll start with our sponsors. So first, I want to thank our company and our marketing folks for sponsoring and doing all that they do for the healthcare cloud community. And then and also I want to give a shout out to Microsoft. I think we're going to have other sponsors, and one of the way Microsoft is actually supporting us in the local community is by letting us use their local regional office here for our in-person meetings. And so I wanted to call them out on our slides, and they've just been a great supporter. And again, we're hoping to get some other sponsors as well. But right now we have Real Activity and Microsoft that are actively supporting the group. So a little bit more about the group. Again, it's the Health Cloud community. This is the Boston chapter, if you will. So the essentially the way this works is that we have two meetings. We have one in person and one virtual. So this one obviously is the virtual meeting. On the second Wednesday of each month, we have an in-person meeting at the local Microsoft office, and that's been a lot of fun. We've been doing these sessions to start the meeting called Sushi and Fire, where we have sushi and we talk about the fire protocol and fire standard and fire data, and as you know, as it relates obviously to healthcare. And then we have a speaker do a presentation. So the meeting is split into two. So if you are in the Boston area, please feel free to join us. And also we are scaling the group. We have folks in other countries and cities that are interested. And so, there will be other chapters starting soon as well. So essentially our mission, we're a diverse membership with a common goal of using technology to enhance the experience of patients, providers, members, and researchers in healthcare. For more information, go ahead and check out our website. Our community manager and our team put a bit of time into the website, so it'd be great to get any feedback you might have. And then also note that we are on Discord, so you could go to Discord/healthcare, and that will bring you to our Discord server. And of course, right now, if you're just watching this live on your screen or watching the recording after this, just zap this QR code right now. I'm trying to speak slowly to give you a couple of extra seconds to zap the QR code. And essentially what that will do is it will bring you out to a link tree where you'll have access to all of our information, everything you need to know about the community. And so with that said, I'd like to start today's meeting, now that we've gone through the logistics stuff, by just giving Kody Johnston a warm welcome. Kody is amazing. Let me just first say that I have gotten a chance to meet Kody in person. We actually worked on a very cool project with Microsoft out in Redmond, Washington, a couple of months ago. That's how we were introduced to each other. And Kody has a slew of practical experience as both in clinical informatics, but also working in the clinical setting with patients as well. And so I'll let him, formally introduce himself. And then what we're going to do is he's got a couple of slides he's going to go through, and then we'll wrap it up with the discussion about low code. So how are you doing, Kody?
I'm well, Paul. Can you hear me? Everything good?
I can, yeah. And I know we were having problems with your slides earlier. So if it gets to a point where if Trisha can't share them, then if you can just go through them without displaying them, we can always make sure that people have a link to the actual slides in the description afterwards.
Okay, perfect.
So that, we won't let that, won't let that be an issue at all. And so with that said, why don't you start off by just introducing yourself and then going through the few slides that you do have. And then when you're ready, I'll come back in and we'll have a little discussion about low code. How's that sound?
Sounds great, Paul. Well, I mean, to those watching and those that will watch, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak to you and just have your time. More importantly, as Paul said, we met in Washington. It was a really robust session with Microsoft. It was really enjoyable to get to know him, where we kind of talked about low code citizen development and specifically what it's doing in the enterprise setting today. So just to echo a little bit and give a little bit more of just my background, as Paul said, I'm a RN by trade. So I don't have coding skills. I wasn't trained originally in technology. I worked in the field in the hospital setting, specifically acute care, and then transitioned to post-acute care, which is the realm I work in today. And for those of you that might be unaware, post-acute care is the care that we give patients at home once they transition to the hospital, from the hospital. So that's your home health, your hospice, and so on and so forth. But in that time, I was blessed to start a no-code and low-code technology company where we focused on a specific low-code platform. And that opened my eyes to a lot of the power of technology, which led me to further my education as a nurse informaticist. And really just with that education, working in healthcare, IT, working as a clinical informaticist for the past 3 years, that is kind of the birthplace, my origin, so to speak, of where citizen development originated and why I'm so passionate about it and so fiery to see it implemented in healthcare today. Because as a little teaser, and Tresha, if you want to go ahead and just share the first slide and we'll see if it works. As a little teaser, while in theorem citizen development is a great thing, there's a little bit of roadblocks to enterprises implementing it today. And so as we go over these slides, really just to plant the seed of what citizen development is and paint the roadmap of this conversation today, there's really 3 things that I would like to go over with you. And it's really, what is citizen development, how I personally define it. This is Kody's definition. It's not a book definition. What are the 3 domains of citizen development as I see them today, based on my experience of implementing citizen development in healthcare organizations and also with enterprise customers in just the tech space and other industry settings, and also how citizen development is practical innovation on steroids. And so, catchy little title on that 3rd topic, but hopefully we'll be able to digest it down, and hopefully it'll open some eyes on why citizen development is powerful. And furthermore, the robustness of practical innovation it can offer a business, an enterprise, a citizen developer, or any organization that might be leveraging low code and no code today as it stands. Thanks, Tresha. Yep, there you go. I work from, there we go. Okay, so what is citizen development? Thank you so much, Tresha. I'll just ask you to change slide here in a second. Apologies about the technical difficulties, guys, but to touch on what is citizen development. Now, again, this is Kody's definition. I define citizen development as a business implementing the creation of business applications, that's web apps or mobile apps, whatever it is, by citizen developers that are not trained in coding languages. I do want to give a quick clarification on here. There are many people with coding, skills, many professional programmers that leverage low and no code skills, and those individuals are very needed. But when we look at what a true citizen development structure is, and when we break down further the people, the process, and technology, these 3 domains that really comprise citizen development, what we traditionally see is that citizen development that's being implemented really leverages citizen developers and employees within an organization that don't have coding experience or are not trained in these. Like I mentioned in a couple slides earlier, I have never been trained in any coding languages. I've picked up a little bit of SQL through time, but you'll be shocked at some of these organizations that are implementing citizen development at scale. Shell, Ford, a couple more I'll reference in this presentation. And how it's changing the game with citizen developers. So, if we look at this Venn diagram that I've made, this is really the theorem, the people, process, and technology. And it's really fun for me to talk about these 3 domains, because at Maxwell Healthcare Associates, where I work in the consulting firm for post-acute, we're the leader consulting firm for that setting. we help home health hospice organizations with people, process, and technology. So as I was thinking about, how can we really comprise this and put it in a package, I was like, oh, this is perfect, because if the theorem is like people, process, and technology, the practicum, or the who and the how, really are citizen developers, the governance and strategy, and the low code and no code platforms. And I put all of those in parentheses underneath each of the respective circles of the domains, the word I'm using to describe these. And so, we'll touch on this in the next slide here in a second, but y'all, the most powerful organizations that are adopting citizen development at scale, that are implementing it and reaping the benefits, that are really helping it, they do all three of these in balance. You can definitely focus on two of these, like people and technology, but as we're going to find out, there's a risk of creating shadow IT on steroids when we do that. The thing, I guess what I'm trying to say is, the thing I think is missing the most from businesses and enterprises, as I see them and talk with executives today, is a lack of process, a lack of a standardized way of working, of governance and strategy that's light touch enough for citizen developers to not quench them and keep them going, but also that satisfies a lot of security, a lot of industry standards in healthcare, like HIPAA, things we have to adhere by for our cybersecurity and our IT departments as they're sanctioning these environments and leveraging low and no code platforms, which is the parenthesis in the technology domain bubble. So hopefully that makes sense. Again, just using all three of these things in a balance really scales and accelerates the citizen development culture that will bleed into practical innovation for enterprises that leverage it well. If you want to click the next slide, Trisha. Awesome. So I'm going to quote a buddy of mine. He's an associate. If you're on LinkedIn and you follow me, you probably see some of his posts too. He's been well at citizen development, even much longer than me, but his name's Matt Hubbard. Follow him if you don't know him. He's a great guy. He even takes people on citizen development journeys for those that want to become citizen developers on a specific low code, no code platform he works for. But he has this quote, and I kind of teased it a little bit earlier, but he mentions to focus only on people and technology will create shadow IT on steroids, and process cannot be ignored. And the reason I'm quoting him in that is because moving forward into these next three slides I have for the presentation, I want you to keep process at the forefront of your mind. Because it's the thing I see that's lacking. I'm really passionate about keeping that in the forefront as we're talking about citizen development expansion and also ingestion into an organization. But what I want to do is take these three domains and just touch on a couple of the benefits of leveraging citizen development at scale for an organization and implementing this new way of working. So focusing on the people, which again, on a practicum level is really your citizen developers. Some of the benefits that I've noticed in this people domain is that when we use citizen development at an enterprise, it democratizes development for non-professional coders. If you are a professional coder, if you're a software developer, one, thank you for what you do, but to even infrastructure, whatever you are in healthcare IT, there's a high demand for software developers, coders, and there's not a large supply to meet all the demand. Gartner, Forrester, these companies have already come out and forecasted that citizen developers will outnumber professional coders 4-to-1 or 5-to-1. It's some number like that. And that's not a statement of saying, one is better than the other, but it is a statement to say, to paint the picture, we don't have enough supply to meet the demand. And, if you work in an IT department, which we'll get into the technology bucket soon, the vast amount of backlog that you're experiencing in your healthcare entity. There's never a list of things not to do, I guess, so to speak. So this democratizing the development to non-professional coders, it's a massive benefit that exists for citizen developers, and kind of dispersing that work to people in custom business applications, which might never have been there before. It speeds up and simplifies turning ideas into apps. This is kind of linked to the process, but in a citizen development culture that is really empowering citizen developers adequately and with best practice, it takes ideas from conception into deployment, from ideation to deployment rapidly. And there's really structured ways to do this. I'll touch on process here in a second, but that's a benefit for citizen developers. If they experience a problem or a bottleneck, which is kind of the fourth bullet point, it lets those who know the problem best to create the solution. When you empower your citizen developers adequately, it lets them just rapid fire go into creating a problem within a sanctioned setting that's safe, that IT has determined. And this third one is really important in the people category. It creates ownership and autonomy through practical innovation. This is a human-centric approach, and I want to give a call out to this because those watching this or that might watch this in the future, you might understand where there was a time when you were working where you experienced a bottleneck to something in your just daily job, and you couldn't do nothing to fix it. You had to go through, the typical maybe hierarchical way of working, submit things to your managers, but maybe it got lost and then nothing ever happened to that. Correct citizen development implementation turns that idea upside down, where you give those people who might be disgruntled ownership and autonomy to create the solutions to the very problems they're facing. And that human-centric reward, that philosophical understanding of like what happens to that person. They might even be the person that's most resistant, maybe in your department, but giving them that small switch of ownership and autonomy, you'll be surprised what wonders it can do to an individual if that description I just mentioned fits the case. Moving to the process, and I'll rapid fire through these. Guys, just to touch on the process, there's been a lot of advancement in the structure, the strategy, and the governance of how to do this in enterprise. And this is where people, I think, are the most lost, and businesses are the most lost. Like I said, people and technology are easy. Easiest, so to speak, but the process is much, much harder, and it's personally tailored to a business. So without going through all these like in-depth detail just for time's sake, I encourage you guys to look at the Project Management Institute Citizen Development Framework. I'm going to show you a couple slides here that cues that. I'm certified as a citizen developer, as a practitioner, and a business architect in that process modality that they offer for the business and how to implement it. Creatio is another solution. I'm probably botching their name, but that's another way of working and another process to leverage no code in your business setting and how to do it successfully. But a good process, a couple things you want to look for in a business with an excellent process is that you want a framework and a way of working that accelerates your product and service creation. Citizen development is made for that. You can have no and low code all you want, and you need them, in my opinion. But what's the process to scale that at large and to accelerate the digital transformation that can come from citizen development? In matrix or hierarchical companies, some of the more mature citizen development companies like Shell and Ford I mentioned, and more I can't go into right now, they have centers of excellence, community of practices within their organization for their citizen developers, where it's a repository of information. It's a repository of maybe low code things that IT has helped, or citizen developments that might understand a little bit of coding have put in there to help that community of citizen development within the organization to just run with it. It has automation best practices, FAQ document. It's a community in and of itself that's growing. And that is something you'll see in an excellent process in a latter stage of its maturity. And so, to help cut costs and build resilience in volatile times, that goes without saying. For those of you that do watch this, I can tell you this as an eyewitness and a firsthand experience. Guys, I have seen simple apps in a citizen development framework save enterprises millions of dollars. You might not be surprised by that, but when I say millions, I mean millions, and it perpetuates on itself. And the reason it does is because you might be replacing a third-party technology with what was created, right? In a process that goes from ideation to development, deployment, evaluation, and maintenance, these things in the SDLC lifecycle. A successful process is going to gear you up to differentiate what are apps that we can just fast track, what are apps that are assisted where we might need the citizen developer to develop 70% of them, but IT to develop the other 30% because there's heavy integration and, hey, we need to loop cybersecurity in on this because there's a little PHI that might be involved in that. I'm just throwing examples out there. But processes like the Project Management Institute Citizen Development Process and Creatio, they have ways of identifying this, creating the standardization and documentation that lets your people and your technology thrive. And so in the technology bucket, goes without saying, we leverage low code and no code. Citizen development, I'm actually writing a research article in healthcare right now. And I touch on just how low code and no code technologies are imperative. They're married with successful citizen development. You really can't have one without the other. They flex with each other to tackle the problem. And so it's, Microsoft Cloud for Health, the cloud solutions that are in that, even Google Health, just plenty of other resources and low code, no code technologies for healthcare. They're expanding and they're really digitizing this digital transformation at large for these companies. Mitigating shadow IT risk and improving code quality. We've already touched on that. Increases the transparency of application inventory. This is something that links to the centers of excellence, communities of practice, letting IT and the business unit merge together and to see a transparency and putting value on your citizen developers, like even from an executive level of, hey, maybe the CEO wants to brag on this person. They just created a quality assurance form tracking app for us that replaced all of our paper process, automates 5 modes of communication between 6 business lines. And you can use the app in less than a minute. You can fill out this paper document compared to writing it, in something else. Mohammed, the citizen here is citizen developers. It's more representing the concept of what a citizen development is. It's someone without coding experience. And so in the technology bucket, you can also accelerate the backlog for healthcare IT teams. And with your citizen developers who are creating these mobile applications with low code and no code technology, you can partner it and try to get rid of some of that backlog. If you want to go to the next slide, Tricia, I'll just speed through these because I know I don't have a lot more time. To touch on this, guys, a citizen development culture and a citizen development process. Yeah, I put process up here. It is a living representation of practical innovation. And this is how I define practical innovation, which is even different from innovation or continuous innovation, process innovation. I define practical innovation. West Monroe has a great definition. They're a digital agency firm. They describe practical innovation as solving problems that matter with real commercial application, not innovating for the sake of creating something new or cool, but attacking the issues with new ideas or solutions that give meaningful value. And so this image, what you're looking at, is a citizen development canvas. It's a process, a way of working for an organization to leverage citizen development, the people domain of this conversation, and no and low code technology, the technology domain, with an IT department, and successfully build an enterprise that builds practical innovation at scale. You have documented ways of working for ideating your solutions in interdisciplinary settings with nurses, maybe with your IT professional, with people at the table who experience the problems, tracking, suitability assessments, tracking like, hey, this app idea we want to create in the citizen development process. Joe Smith has this idea. Is it suitable? Like, what are the risk requirements? What are the, based on a business analysis design, or enterprise, diagram form where you're tracking upstream and downstream processes for automating within a citizen development framework. These are all things that exist in a good framework. And again, this is just the Project Management Institutes. There's more out there. But a process structured around citizen development that lets the organization run with it and lets them do it successfully, it's going to yield the benefit of leveraging no and low code, your citizen developers, and more importantly, citizen development as an umbrella for product creation and digital transformation at large. And if you want to hit the next slide for me, Tricia. I know we're at the 25-minute mark. This is just a simple example, guys. this is a hyper-agile SDLC model. Many of us on this call might be familiar with SDLC, agile project management methodology frameworks. But this is an example of a piece of in that framework of taking an initial idea, making it go through certain checks and balances within a citizen development process, and taking it all the way from ideation, design, build, deploy, and then implementing it to your people, and then going back to the beginning and changing it. This is just one piece, and it's really that ideation 2.0 bubble. If we went back to the previous slide, you don't have to, but whenever you get these resources at the end. And that's really it. I want to leave some time just for any questions or dialogue. I know I kind of rapid fired that whole thing, but just to review citizen development, it's really a business implementing business applications to be created by citizen developers, and specifically those people that don't really have coding experience. And it's the combination of people, process, and technology that comprise the greater whole of citizen development.
That's awesome, Kody. I loved your presentation. A couple of things just to start the conversation. We just have a few minutes, so I won't be too long. But
yeah, sure, man.
One of the things that I really liked and inspired me in the beginning of your talk is just the mere fact that you made this decision to go from being a clinical RN into the technology world, and doing that through low code. Because we hear about this all the time, right? We hear about people that make a change in their career, sure, and low code, because it doesn't necessarily require a computer science degree. It creates a very easy path for folks to get into technology. And then what we're finding is that, especially in healthcare, and I think you're an attestment to this, is that those, we call them SMEs sometimes, right? Subject matter experts. And so, sure, those subject matter experts, when you empower them with these tools, it's incredible what can happen in the organization, right? And I think that's the second thing I wanted to call out that I loved about your presentation, is that those slides from the Project Management Institute, and just that really brings it to life, right? Like, I didn't know that they had low code templates up there for, project management, and you had the various different stages of that. And so, just really great stuff across the board. And I think, just to wrap that thought up, that's where the subject matter experts, when empowered with low code, I think that's why they can make such an impact, is because they do have a command of the business, right? Or in our case, it's it's the healthcare and making patients feel better and happy, right? Positive outcomes.
For sure.
Yeah. So I guess that's how I would, just start by thanking you for your time today, and also just adding, some comment to your thing, to your recording here. I think I'd like to just remind folks that we're going to have a bunch of links in the description. So again, if you're watching this after it's been published, check out the description link. There's a link to Kody's LinkedIn profile as well, and then we'll have some other links there for you. And with that, Kody, I guess I would just let you close with a single question, and that is: do you have any advice for other people that might be in a similar position as you were, where you were, on the clinical side of things, but then you found, sure, you had this new passion for technology and low code? Like, is there anything in hindsight that you learned, or that you can, warn people of? Like, anything you can share? Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a great question too. My hip holster answer, without much thought, is use what you have and build relationships with IT. Because at the end of the day, a human-centric theme to all of this is citizen development really builds relationships between the clinical, between the IT. The reason I became an informaticist is because they're typically a liaison between both departments. And so using what you have, whether it's just Microsoft Power Apps, if you're in Google, using Google App Sheet, starting with what you have, testing it out, building relationships with IT, meeting them, do a brown bag lunch. Those are all things I wish I would have done earlier in my endeavors of learning low code and no code, from where I'm at today.
Well, that's amazing. Again, Kody, thank you for your time. It was a pleasure meeting you at Microsoft a couple months ago. It was such an honor
Likewise.
to have you here, give this presentation for us. Folks, that's it for today. Please use the QR code. I put it back up on the screen to get a link to our link tree and learn all about our group. If you're interested in speaking, you'll find the link there, and you'll also find the future meetings. Cheers. Thank you very much.
Gotcha. Bye, everybody. Thank you all for your time.